In a massive castle deep in the woods, there lived a young duke playing the piano. From the music he was playing bringing a deep sorrow. Since the age of 5, the young duke has been cursed by a witch of death. The curse caused everything he touched to take his life. Terrified with the curse on her son, the duke's mother kicked him out to live in a separate mansion. Beside the duke, there was only a maid named Alice to take care of and keep him company. She is the daughter of the head maid in the Duke family. 2 years ago she unexpectedly came to this mansion to take care of the young Duke. Although she knew that her master was carrying the curse of death, Alice was not afraid. On the contrary, she often tries to make fun of him. In fact, the Duke just wanted Alice to appreciate herself more, since she was the only maid willing to live with him. After supper, the Duke sat alone in the garden and pondered the witch's curse. Suddenly a butterfly flew by, startling the Duke. He accidentally touched the tree next to him, and instantly caused it to dry up. A large tree branch was unfortunately broken and fell on top of the Duke. Alice suddenly appeared right in front of him, causing him to jump up in surprise. The next morning, Alice again woke the Duke up and prepared him a delicious breakfast. Because he didn't have dinner last night, Alice was very worried about his health. Seeing Alice's devotion, the Duke took a few bites. The maid curiously asked why he seemed so indifferent to eating. The Duke replied that since he was under the curse, when he was eating, he suffered the most, because he always had to eat alone in loneliness. But Alice's appearance made him eat more and the Duke was grateful for that. Today, a friend of the Duke, Philip, will visit him. Philip was a childhood friend of the Duke, and as a child used to carry snakes or insects to scare him. The Duke was very confused and asked Alice if she should refuse, but Alice knew well that the Duke wanted to see his childhood friend. Alice had prepared the Duke a beautiful suit and tied a bow for him herself. When he met Philip, the Duke reminded him of his childhood, but he didn't remember anything. The conversation between the Duke and his friend took place in an awkward atmosphere with Philip's high vigilance. After the talk, Philip met with Alice privately and advised her to leave this house, as being next to the recipe was very dangerous. At this moment, the Duke appeared and asked Philip not to make it difficult for Alice. Seeing him coming, Philip showed a scared face and tried to keep his distance from the Duke. Turns out he didn't want to come here, but was asked by the Duke's mother to see how he was living. Philip reveals that the Duke family is planning to let his younger brother inherit the estate. If that happened, then they would sever all ties with the young Duke. When Philip left, the Duke tried to pretend he was fine and said he wanted to have dinner. But in reality, he was very sad because now the person he had always considered as a real friend was also afraid of this curse. While gnawing on sadness in the garden, suddenly Alice appeared and invited the Duke to dinner. On the way to the house, the Duke told all his heart and feelings to Alice. He loves her so much but feels unworthy because of the evil curse. He can't even give her a fresh flower because everything in his hand has become wilted. Alice took the withered rose in the Duke's hand and said that it was enough, and she vowed to stay by his side to find a way to break this curse. At that moment, the Duke was determined to one day put the wedding ring on Alice's hand. After a long convalescence, the Duke's butler Rob returned to the mansion. The Duke was very fond of his housekeeper because he was the only one who followed him to this lonely castle. To him he was more than a father. The butler was very old, so his eyes and nose were also very poor. Sometimes he mistakenly looked at the Duke of Castle Alice and almost touched him. The young Duke has a strong passion for the piano. Thanks to it, his life has become much less boring. He even thinks that in the future he will make a living with music. The Duke had said that this was the ballad he had dedicated to Alice, which made the maid very happy. After playing the piece, the Duke fell asleep on the piano. Alice had wanted to place a kiss on her master's lips, but she smiled and withdrew her intention because now was not the time. One day, the Duke was composing music when a red-haired girl burst into his room. The girl's name was Viola and the younger sister of the Duke. He panicked and called Alice over and asked why she had let her in. Viola often escaped from her mother to visit her brother, but the Duke thought that she just wanted to find somewhere to relax. Viola especially likes the sweets that Alice makes. As soon as she saw her brother's face, she knew immediately that the Duke liked his maid. So she used that to tease her brother all day. After seeing Viola home, the Duke saw a black cat. He shouted to Alice to take the cat away because it was sitting in front of his door. It turned out that because he couldn't predict the cat's actions, he was afraid to touch it. When Alice picked up the cat, it suddenly jumped up and chased after the Duke. He panicked and ran away, and it turned out that it was attracted by the Duke's strap. The housekeeper discovered on the cat's neck a paper. The content inside said "Forgive me." Seeing this, the Duke guessed that the cat had also been abandoned by its owner. Later, a group of feral cats came to play with the black cat. Seeing the lonely cat finally have his own family made the Duke feel warm. That evening, the Duke and his maid Alice talked together on the balcony. Then they danced together in the dim moonlight. But the two still could not touch each other, only walking to the music by themselves. One day, Alice asked the Duke to play a game of billiards on the condition that the loser would do whatever the winner asked. Because he was too confused by the voluptuous figure of the maid, the formula guy eventually lost. Alice had made a request that the Duke would go for a walk with her because there was a carnival down there. To ensure safety, Alice dressed the Duke with a thick iron suit. Like this, even if someone else touched it, nothing would happen. Even so, the suit was so heavy and bulky that it made it difficult for the Duke to move. So he lost Alice in the middle of the street while she was looking at the flower stall. While trying to find the owner, a woman wearing a skull mask grabbed Alice's hand and called her Sharon. Alice told her that she was not Sharon but her mother. The strange woman did not say anything more and immediately left. Meanwhile, the Duke was wandering around looking for Alice when he came across a boy who was as lost as he was. The boy burst into tears, making the Duke extremely confused because he himself lost his way. The Duke suddenly saw a piano in the middle of the street, so he decided to play a song to comfort the boy. His funny music made the whole street bustling. Everyone and even the lost boy danced to the Duke's exciting music. As soon as the music was played, Alice also found the master. The maid wanted to take the Duke back to the mansion but he still wanted to stay here and play a little more, so the two of them enjoyed the festival until late into the night. When she got home, Alice sent the Duke a note saying that if he had trouble sleeping he could come to her room. It turned out that the maid had prepared chrysanthemum tea and scented candles to help the master relax and fall asleep. Before falling asleep, the Duke told Alice that the day after tomorrow night he wanted to ask her out to a place where there was something special that he wanted for her. On the day of the rendezvous, the Duke had rowed Alice to the middle of a lake. It turned out that he had calculated that there would be a meteor shower today, so he wanted to watch them with Alice. A sudden gust of wind blew the Duke's hat off, and Alice got up to catch it, lost her balance and fell off the boat. Alice then tricked the formula into falling into the lake with her. In the end, both of them missed the moment of rain after the ice, so the Duke was very upset because it was a once-in-10 years opportunity. The next day, the maid Alice suddenly turned cold and stopped teasing the Duke as usual. That made the Duke extremely worried and thought she was angry because he had refused her kiss last night. Later he asked the housekeeper Rob to check and discovered that Alice was sick. He thought that it was because he fell into the lake last night that the maid caught a cold. But the truth was that last night Alice had stood all night by the window, watching her master sleep soundly. As time passed, winter began to flow again, and Alice knitted the Duke a scarf that made him extremely happy. When it was snowing in the yard, the Duke asked Alice to go out and throw the snow. Both of them and the housekeeper had a good time playing and then they made a snowman that looked like the Duke. After entering the house, Alice discovered that the earring given to her by her mother had fallen off one side. Seeing this, the Duke went to the garden in the snowstorm alone to find it for her. After shoveling snow for a while, he passed out from the cold. Suddenly, a man wearing a skull mask flew down from the sky, and when the Duke woke up, he said he was lost in a snowstorm. Seeing the Duke fainting in the snow again, this man took off his mask and used magic to warm the surrounding space. It turned out that this person was a sorceress named Calf, who found Alice's earring and returned it to the Duke. The Duke invited Calf to rest in his mansion. He told the witch about his curse, but she didn't know how to break it. Nor did she know anything about the witch who had cast it on the Duke. Calf says he got lost from a friend and he's a wizard guy. The next morning, while looking at the snowman like the master, Alice remembered that when she was a child. The next day, Alice invited the Duke to go ice skating with her in the lake. While watching the maid glide across the lake, the Duke came across a talking bird. He was startled and even thought that because he fell and hit his head, he had a hallucination. The bird said it was a magician and was looking for a lost friend, which turned out to be a friend of the witch, Calf. Upon seeing Alice, the bird revealed itself as a bird-headed man and introduced himself as a mage named Zane. This magician showed a very fondness for Alice, making the Duke's eyes red with jealousy. He pushed Zane away and even forbade him to make eye contact with Alice. At this time, Alice hooked a small bat from her body, which turned out to be the witch Calf. Seeing that ice skating was quite interesting, Calf also asked to play, and the four of them had a fun afternoon skating together. In the evening, before leaving, Calf and Zane said that on the night of the red moon they would take the Duke to the sorcerer's sabbat. Using that opportunity, the Duke could learn about the witch who had cast the curse on him. Alice used a cute face to ask the master to let her go, so he had to agree. On the day the moon turned red, Kaff and Zane appeared as promised. Kaff gave the Duke and Alice 2 cloaks to hide the smell of humans from the witches. Zane then enchanted a large mirror in the Duke's house and opened a portal to teleport. The 4 of them pass by and are led to the world of witches. The witches of this world each had a peculiar look that frightened the Duke. From the sky, a witch in a skull mask suddenly appeared. Zane has said that this woman's name is Daleth, and is his and Kaff's boss. Daleth took out a notebook and began to list the witches who attended the Sabbat. When she read Kaff, she asked who the 2 strangers were with her. The bird-headed mage was about to answer that he was a friend of the 2 of them, but the thief replied that it was her and Zane's child. After the roll call was over, the sorceress Daleth announced some miscellaneous news and announced that the Sabbat was over. Before the Duke could find out what was going on, the ceremony was over. A wizard came to ask Zane why he married a half-human witch like Kaff, because it was an insult to them. But that question angered Zane and forced him to apologize to Kaff, and Alice went to the sorceress Daleth to ask about the Duke's curse. Daleth says the curse cannot now be broken because the witch curse the Duke is dead. Neither she nor the other witches know how to break the curse because it was created by a magical genius. After saying that, Daleth burned the cloak of comrades, causing him to be noticed by the witches. They rushed to attack him, but fortunately Zane and Kaff were able to open the way to bring the group back to the castle. Although he could not find a way to break the curse, the Duke was still very grateful to Kaff and Zane for helping him. The sorceress said that when she saw the Duke struggling in the snow for Alice, she wanted to be friends with him. The Duke heard that and was very happy because he now had real friends. The Duke had a younger brother named Walter. He was a handsome and pompous prince admired by many. Currently, Walter is the one most likely to inherit the Duke's estate. But even so, Walter always felt hatred for his brother. He thinks that whether his brother is cursed or not, he is still a substitute. Because of that, he always wanted to prove that he was more worthy of inheriting the inheritance than his brother. Today, Viola went to the Duke's house again to play. The little girl caught the witch Kaff in the living room and thought she was a thief. When the Duke appeared and explained, Viola learned that Kaff was her brother's new friend. On a snowy day that covered the mansion, Alice and the Duke sat playing chess by the window. When she looked outside, she remembered the time when she had just returned to this mansion. At that time, the Duke was drowning in despair because of the evil curse. The butler Rob brought Alice to the Duke and told her that from now on she would be his personal servant. The Duke does not want anyone to serve him and orders the butler to send Alice away. But Alice remains determined to stay at the mansion to take care of her childhood friend. Alice did everything she could to make the Duke's mood better, but the Duke remained irritable and tried to find a way to kick her out of the house. He even made Alice clean the room that he had ruined in 3 days. If he couldn't do it, he would be fired. Alice did not hesitate to get to work. And with determination she finished cleaning in just 1 night. Unable to find a way to chase Alice away, the Duke chose to leave the mansion. He left in the night and passed out on the frosty snow. The maid Alice appeared and begged him not to throw away his life like that. No matter what happens, there is always someone who still loves him. She understands how he feels because since childhood Alice was sick and lonely. From now on, no matter how dangerous she is, she will always be by the Duke's side. Hearing that, the Duke opened his heart to Alice's feelings. He began to like his new maid and was no longer in despair. Back to the present. Today is Christmas Day, so Kaff and Zane brought a pine tree to the villa to hold a party. This is the first time the Duke is preparing for Christmas with his friends, so he is very happy. Walter sneaks inside the mansion and finds a Santa suit on the table. He had just tried it on when Kaff came out and thought he was the real Santa. Afraid of being exposed, Walter had to accept it and give the gift he picked up to the witch. Kaff was so happy that he turned into a bat and took it with Walter and stuffed it into the chimney. The Duke and the others were chatting happily in the living room when suddenly something fell from the fireplace. The younger sister immediately discovered that it was brother Walter, much to the Duke's surprise. At this moment, Kaff climbed in from the window and held in his hand the package that Walter had given him. Viola realized her package, so she rushed to fight with the witch, and Walter said all his resentment for always being a backup for the position of Duke. Walter challenged his brother that whoever found out the truth about the curse would be the official heir. That evening, the Duke had a memorable Christmas night with his sister and new friends. Alice's mother is Sharon, and she has the exact same face as her mother. She was the head maid of the Duke family and a very funny person. Seeing that her little daughter was very close to the owner, she did not object but was also very happy. One night, seeing that the master had trouble sleeping, Alice went to bed with the Duke. The Duke confided in Alice that if he broke the curse, he would ask his mother's permission to marry her, and if not, he would throw the family away. Having said that, the Duke felt relieved and began to fall asleep. Alice quietly left the master's room and went to the butler. She told everything and said that if the Duke left the family, she would be very sad. The housekeeper told her not to worry too much and that it was probably fate for the two of them. After returning home, Walter and his sister rummaged through the warehouse for clues about his brother's curse. Viola found a servant's diary in the mansion and gave it to Alice. While the maid was reading the diary, the wizard Zane came to visit. He seemed to be very interested in the notebook in Alice's hand. By evening, Alice could not find the diary, and it turned out that it had been stolen by Zane. Zane was used by the sorceress Daleth to use Kaf to threaten him to destroy the diary, because it contained information she did not want the Duke to know. Zane was about to burn the notebook when the Duke appeared. Seeing him recognize the notebook in his hand, Zane returned it and told him everything. Duke gives the notebook to Zane and says burn it, since Kaf and Zane are his friends he doesn't want them to be in danger. Zane was very touched and devised a way to pretend to destroy the notebook but still keep a small piece of paper. As long as he has it, he can restore the diary at any time. In this way, it is possible to temporarily bypass Daleth and keep Kaf level safe. And the witch Daleth, after seeing Zane finished, took off the skull mask. She went to open the lid of a coffin, and the person inside was Alice's mother. One day, the Duke was suddenly called home by his mother, so he and Alice got in the car to return to the Duke's mansion. When he saw his son, his mother did not say much, but only suggested that the Duke stay at home for a night, because it was late at night, so if anything happened, let's talk about it tomorrow. After leaving the room, the Duke felt a little sad because of his mother's coldness, but Viola and Walter said that today she was more gentle than usual. Perhaps it was because the Duke was usually treated so gently by Alice that he felt that his mother was cold. When the Duke's mother saw Alice, she was surprised and thought it was Sharon. The old handmaid told Alice that her mother was very close to her mistress. The two of them got along very well and talked together every day. The next day, Viola led the Duke to the place where he was cursed. Upon arrival, the Duke recalled everything that happened when he received this curse. At that time the Duke was trying to find a 4-leaf clover to give to little Alice when suddenly a smoke appeared and someone came up to him from behind and said that from now on he will not be able to love anyone. And not loved by anyone. At dinner, the Duke's mother made it clear that the reason for calling him here was to decide the heir. She asked him to quickly find a way to break the curse or let Walter receive the inheritance. The Duke took the opportunity to present his wish to marry Alice, but his mother stated that her status was not worthy to be the Duke's wife. She also said that when he was born into the Duke's family, he did not have the right to love freely. The Duke lost his temper and loudly said that he was completely serious about this. Alice didn't care about the curse and still treated him like a normal person. She was the mother who locked him in a lonely cold villa, but now she wants to tie up his feelings. The Duke further added that not only himself but Walter or Viola were not her toys. The Duke had declared that he would marry Alice no matter what and left the dining room. The two younger brothers saw that and ran after their brother to see him off. When the Duke got to the car, Alice had been waiting for him for a long time, and the two returned to the mansion and continued their journey to break the young Duke's curse. This is the end of the movie. Thank you very much. Please subscribe and press the notification button to wait for new videos. Hello and see you all again.